But it's, again, it just tells the story of it's the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
This is Franky Rose's Think Tank. Here's your host, Franky Rose.
Well, good morning. Welcome to the Think Tank. So, we are going to go over Karen Reid's original Canton Police Report. So, this was done on January 30th of 2022. And let me set this up. And away we go. Okay, so again, January 30th, 2022, and time reported 6:08 a.m. and date and time again, the 29th, it says here, of January 2022 at 8:24, reporting officer Sergeant Sean Good. So let's see here. The location, 32 Fairview Road in Canton. And then we have a bunch of witnesses. Witness, 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 witness. Let's see here. Who have we got? So, reporting party, Jennifer McCabe. And reporting party, Carrie Robertson. Witness, Brian Higgins. B. Albert. Nicole Albert. Matthew McCobb. Brian Albert. Caitlin Albert. Tristan Morris. Julie Nagel. And then the property, there is a broken drinking glass, 6 solo cups with blood and water. Alrighty, so here we go. Let me see if I can get this any bigger. One more? No. So, on January 29th, 2022, I was the patrol supervisor of the 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift. At approximately 6:04 a.m., I arrived East 911 call, received an E911 call from a woman reporting an unresponsive male party found in the snow. They're not saying cop, they're saying male party found in the snow at 34 Fairview Road. At the time, the weather was very heavy snow with temperatures in the teens. The call was transferred to Canton Fire, and I dispatched Officer Saraf and Mullany to assist. I notified Lieutenant Gallagher and Defendant Sergeant Lank respectfully after hearing the seriousness of the call. So yeah, I'll say it's serious. Once on the scene, the victim was already in the back of the ambulance and CPR was in progress. I was met by McCabe, Jennifer. Date of birth is February 14th, 1976. Carrie Roberts, January 10th, 1977. And Karen Reid, February 26, 1980, all standing outside of the ambulance. All parties were referenced by their first names going forward. Jennifer introduced herself to me and explained that they found their friend, John O'Keefe, December 8th, 1975, lying unresponsive on his back in the snow. Jennifer explained that they arrived at this address because it was the last place Karen, John's girlfriend, believed he would be. Jennifer stated that she had gotten a call from Karen around 4:53 a.m. inquiring about John's whereabouts. She told Karen she didn't know where he was. I asked Jennifer why she would think you would know where he was. Jennifer explained that the group of them had all been at the Waterfall Grill and Bar in Canton earlier that night. At around 12 a.m., Jennifer and her husband left the bar, heading to her brother in law's place, Brian Albert, who was a cop at 34 Fairview Road. Jennifer stated Karen and John were at the bar together around 12:14 a.m. John texted Jennifer asking where they were going. Jennifer invited them to 34 Fairview Road. A short time later, Jennifer stated she saw Karen and John pull up in their car and saw the passenger door open, but they never came in. And then she seen the car drive off. Jennifer just thought they changed their mind and went home for the night. I walked over to Karen and asked her who she was and how she ended up there. Jay also placed Karen in the back of my Cruiser 582 to warm up. I think that's a 5, could be a 682. Karen was hysterical and continually yelling, "Is he dead?" I kept reassuring her that Canton Fire was doing everything that they could do to save his life. I asked how John ended up there, and she stated, "I don't know." I asked her if she drove here last night, and she stated, "I think so." Then I can't remember. At this point, I stopped asking questions because she was too upset and unable to keep her train of thought. Too upset to keep her train of thought. Isn't that interesting? At this time, Detective Sergeant Lank arrived on the scene, and I had briefed him on what had transpired so far. I then spoke to Carrie, who stated she was contacted by her friend, Karen, around 5 a.m., wondering if she knew where John was. Carrie stated she called a few hospitals and the Canton Police to see if he had been transported at some point during the night. Then Carrie picked up Jennifer and Karen, and they began to search for John, ending up here at 34 Fairview. Canton Fire began to transport the victim to Good Samaritan, and Karen, who was now sitting in Carrie's car, began to act out, yelling and screaming, "Is he dead?" and trying to get out of the car and walk around. At this time, I advised Carrie and Karen I advised Carrie, to take Karen home and that she would not be needed anymore. Moments later, I was contacted by dispatch that Karen was making unaliving statements to her father over the phone. I made the decision to have Carrie bring Karen back to the scene and had her transported to the hospital via Section 12. Oh? Detective Sergeant Lank at this time contacted the homeowner at 34 Fairview Road and completed a supplemental report. I spoke to Officer Saraf and asked him what he observed arriving first on the scene. Saraf stated that he saw a woman, Karen, attempting CPR on the victim in the snow. Saraf stated that Karen had blood on her mouth, which he believed to be from the victim's mouth and nose area. Saraf explained seconds later that Canton Fire arrived on the scene and took over medical care, and moments later, I arrived. So this is the supplemental narrative for Patrolman Stephen A. Saraf. On June 29th, 2022, I was dispatched to 34 Fairview Road for a report of an unresponsive party in the snow. When I arrived, I saw 3 people on the ground over the victim, O'Keefe, waving at me. They said he was not breathing. They were performing CPR on O'Keefe. I noticed Reed, Karen, the victim's girlfriend, had blood on her face from doing mouth to mouth. O'Keefe was bleeding from his face. I went over to the victim and felt his skin, and it was cold to the touch. I asked if he had been a substance user, and they said no, he is a Boston cop. I went to get the AED from my patrol vehicle, and at the same moment, the Canton Fire Department was arriving. CFD took over the care of Mr. O'Keefe. Following that, Reed, Karen kept screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She was severely distraught and not able to tell me what happened. I tried to console her and keep her out of the inclement weather. I had her sit in one of the cars. Sergeant Good arrived and started speaking to the parties there that were there. Supplemental narrative for Stephen Mullaney. On Wednesday, January 29th, 2022, I, Officer Mullaney, was assigned to patrol the East Sector for the 11:45 p.m. through the 7:45 a.m. patrol shift. At approximately 6:05, Officer Saraf and I were dispatched to 34 Fairview Road for a report of an unresponsive party. Upon my arrival, not re-arrival, Canton FD was arriving on the scene. Officer Ruff had already been on the scene. When I exited my cruiser, I observed a female party attempting CPR on a victim in the snow. As I approached the victim, Canton FD began CPR, and I assisted Canton FD with lifting the victim onto a stretcher. The victim was then taken by stretcher to the ambulance. At this time, Officer Saraf asked me to assist in getting witnesses' information. I spoke with McCabe, Jennifer. I asked McCabe who the victim was, and she identified the victim as John O'Keefe. McCabe then explained to me that a group of people had gone to the Waterfall Grill and Bar in Canton Center earlier in the night. Jennifer stated that she and her husband left the bar at approximately 12 a.m. and went to her brother-in-law's house at 34 Fairview Road. McCabe then told me that O'Keefe and his girlfriend, Karen Reed, were invited to 34 Fairview Road but never arrived. I asked McCabe if she knew how long the victim had been where he was found, and she told he was dropped off by Reed sometime between 12 and 1 a.m. McCabe then told me that she was called by Reed at approximately 5 a.m., wondering if she knew where John was. At this time, Sergeant Good arrived on the scene, and the victim was transported to the Good Samaritan shortly after. While talking to McCabe, Reed was hysterical and distraught and repeatedly screamed, "Is he dead? And that's my boyfriend." Sergeant Good then advised Roberts, Carey to take Reed home. After Reed and Roberts left, Canton Control advised officers that Reed was making self-deleting statements to her father. Roberts brought Reed back to the scene where Sergeant Good asked me to fill out a Section 12 paperwork, and she was transported to the Good Samaritan Hospital. I stayed on scene and assisted Sergeant Good, Detective Sergeant Lank, and Lieutenant Gallagher. Supplemental narrative for Sergeant Michael J. Lank. So, although this is a fast document, it is revealing. There has been more than one of these reports, and it's quite amazing when we start going through these documents how things change slightly and sometimes even in a larger perspective. Alrighty, so on January 29th, 2022, at 6 a.m., I was contacted at home by Sergeant Sean Good. Sergeant Good advised me that a male party had been found in the snow by the area of 34 Fairview Road. Sergeant Good stated that the party involved was a Boston police officer who was in grave condition, and Canton EMS was on scene. The conditions at the time were blizzard-like with heavy snow, wind, and freezing temperatures. At approximately 6:24 a.m., I arrived on scene at 34 Fairview Road. Sergeant Good, Officer Saraf, and Officer Mullaney had already spoken to multiple witnesses, and the victim was being treated in the ambulance by Canton EMS. The ambulance left for Good Samaritan Hospital shortly after I arrived. Sergeant Good made me aware that the officer and EMTs told him the victim was bleeding from the nose and mouth. They also stated that he appeared to have swelling above one of his eyes. He had 2 black eyes, is what he had. The first person that I spoke with was McCabe Jennifer. She was able to provide us with a general timeline of events. Jennifer was at the Waterfall Bar and Grill in Canton with her husband Matthew McCabe, Brian Albert, the brother-in-law, and Nicole Albert, the sister. Approximately 11 p.m., they were accompanied at the bar by John O'Keefe and his girlfriend Karen Reed. Approximately 12 a.m., Jennifer, Matthew, Brian, and Nicole left the bar and went back to Albert's house at 34 Fairview Road. At approximately 12:14 a.m., O'Keefe texted Jennifer and asked where they were going. Jennifer responded that they were going to 34 Fairview Road. Moments later, a vehicle pulled up in front of the house, which Jennifer believed was O'Keefe and his girlfriend, Reed. She observed as the vehicle just sat out front of the house for several minutes. The vehicle was facing uphill, with the passenger side facing the house. She thought the vehicle sat outside for at least 15 minutes. McCabe stated that neither party ever came to the door, and ultimately the vehicle drove away. She attempted to text O'Keefe but never got a response. Approximately 1:30 a.m., McCabe and her husband leave the house and give a ride home to Julie Nagel, who lives on Highland Street in Canton. At approximately 4:53 a.m., McCabe was contacted by Reed and redacted, the niece of O'Keefe. They were distraught because O'Keefe never arrived home and was not answering his phone. McCabe and Reed attempted to call some of the O'Keefe's close friends, including Carrie Roberts. At approximately 5 a.m., Roberts picked up McCabe and Reed to go looking for O'Keefe. At approximately 6 a.m., Robert McCabe and Reed located O'Keefe in the yard of the 34 Fairview Road. He was located on the left of the yard, about 80 feet in from the street. 8 feet in, not 80, 8 feet in from the street. I've heard 12, 8 feet. There's a few different. He was found unconscious on the ground, laying on his back, and Roberts began to perform CPR. Approximately 6:04, 911 called and was placed to the Canton Police Station. Officers on the scene were able to secure the scene the best they could as the weather conditions continued to be severe. State Police CPAC unit was contacted at 6:38 a.m. Trooper Proctor called back within a few minutes and was made aware of the situation. While on the scene, all attempts to speak with Reed were unsuccessful. She was hysterical and difficult to control. The only statement she was able to relay to Canton officers while she was on the scene was she did not remember ever being at 34 Fairview Road. Reed later made statements via telephone to her parents, threatening self-deleting. Canton EMS ultimately responded back to the scene, and Reed was taken to the hospital under a Section 12 order. Next, I went to 34 Fairview Road and spoke with the homeowners, Brian Albert and Nicole Albert. Both parties from this point forward will be referred to by their first names. Brian stated that they had seen the victim on at Waterfall Bar and Grill and had spoken to him. He stated that he did not know the party well, but knew that he was a friend of McCabe, the sister-in-law. Brian and Nicole recalled the victim had been welcomed to come to their house but never arrived. When asked about O'Keefe's demeanor, or if O'Keefe had any altercations with anyone earlier at the bar, Brian said that he seemed to be fine at the bar. There was no issues whatsoever. Matthew McCabe, the husband of Jennifer, also stated that he had observed a vehicle pull up in front of the house, but never saw either party get out of the vehicle. Matthew also reiterated what Brian said. O'Keefe seemed to be fine at the bar, that there was really nobody else in the establishment other than their group. Next, I asked Brian and Nicole who else was at the house that night. Aside from the names already mentioned, the following people were present at some point during the time in question. Brian Albert Jr., which is Brian and Nicole's son, Caitlin Albert, the daughter, Julie Nagel, Brian Jr.'s friend, Brian Higgins, who is is a friend of Brian Albert Sr.'s. They advised me that their daughter Caitlin left the house about 12:15 a.m. when she was picked up by her boyfriend Tristan Morris. While still on the scene, Lieutenant Gallagher, Sergeant Good, and I attempted to retrieve as much evidence as possible given the weather conditions. Lieutenant Gallagher was able to use a leaf blower to blow away the top layers of snow. We were able to observe a broken drinking glass and multiple patches of red, which appeared to be frozen blood drops. 6 samples of this substance was retrieved by using red solo plastic cups. The broken glass was retrieved and bagged into evidence. Both items were returned to the Canton Police Station and logged into evidence. So I wonder if there's any DNA on that broken glass that was bagged. At approximately 9 a.m., I was contacted at the police station by Jennifer McCabe. She asked if it was possible to come back to 34 Fairview Road and speak to her. Lieutenant Gallagher and I left immediately and arrived back at 34 Fairview within a few moments. McCabe told us she recalled something that she was not sure if we were aware of. She said that when Reed was driving around with her and Roberts looking for the victim, she said something to the effect of, "I hope I didn't hit him." McCabe told us that she made these statements again at the scene when the victim was discovered. She thought Reed may have made these statements in front of the police officer, but was not sure. So that there is what we have. Let me see, just get back to you guys. Okay, so yeah, that is what we have as far as the original Canton Police Report. So, I don't want to say that it gives us any kind of clarity because I don't think it does. So, what I'm going to do is continue to leave different documents. Well, I won't say leave. I'm going to continue to stream and record different documents for us to review, for you guys to review, and leave any thoughts that you have on this case in the description. It would be a very interesting conversation at this point to see what everybody is thinking. So, with that said, friends, thank you very much for spending the time with me. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and hit that thumb. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.